The Game Train.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the very first episode of your new home for Premier League coverage, So You Think You Know Ball. Brought to you by the Gain Train Network. I'm your host, Ronan Gain. Show will drop every Thursday and Friday before the PL game weeks, and every Monday/Tuesday to recap the weekend's action. On today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at the top four. Regularly the most interesting battle for each season, and this year is no different, as in my opinion, we have six teams fighting for just two places, possibly three, depending on club success in Europe in 2024-2025. I think we know the top two. Manchester City and Arsenal remain the two best teams in the Premier League. I don't think anyone's really done anything to close the gap or to really make you believe that they're going to get into that conversation. I think they're absolutely locked in as the top two teams, whatever order it ends up in. I mean, hopefully it's Arsenal. We get to see a little change in the winners, but it's going to be so tough for them to pip Manchester City unless they get a top striker. But moving on from that, last season, Aston Villa and Liverpool finished in third and fourth place, and both give reason to potentially doubt them repeating their success this season. Look at Liverpool going into next season without Jurgen Klopp. How big of an impact is that going to have on them? Not having the great Jurgen Klopp, who was so crucial to all the success they've had over the last 9 years, so important to the fans, so important to the city. How is that going to affect them? Is Arne Slot the man they thought he was? What sort of growing pains are there going to be from this Liverpool team? I mean, Liverpool have a really nice blend of youth, experience, and quality in their side. The only really concern is that they haven't really made any major signings, and they clearly were in for Zubamendi, but he didn't want to come. Their manager clearly thinks they need that new signing, but I'm kind of like I'm not too worried if they don't make any major signings. It's still a very good team. They still have quality throughout their team. Yeah, maybe I get why they want that new number six. I do believe that is a position they need, and I think we believed Endo was a stopgap when they signed him last year, and that's proven to be the case this year, as Arne Slot clearly wants another player to fill that role. But I think they could easily be the next best after City and Arsenal again, as long as they're healthy and how quickly Slot is able to kind of execute his game plan and get the team playing the way he wants. I think that's such a doable, that's such an achievable thing for Liverpool. They still have so much quality in this team, especially in the attacking areas. And if Kwanzaa has this breakout year, like that'll be big alongside Van Dijk. Whoever Van Dijk is playing with, they're going to be that little bit better because they're playing alongside Van Dijk. That helps. He's only a young player, but their tandem is him and Kanate. If they really break out, if Alisson's fit for the whole season, we don't have to see too much of Kelleher, then Liverpool can still have a really great year, even though they are playing in the Champions League. Villa are a bigger question mark. They finished fourth last year, 68 points. They only just pipped Spurs, who finished on 66. They were the surprise packers last year. They did an amazing, amazing job to finish in fourth place. Unai Emery really showed all the people that doubted him after his failure with Arsenal that he really is a top level manager who can do great things even when it's not expected. They did finish significantly behind the top three. They had also had great health for the majority of their squad. There was never a major injury to the likes of like a Douglas Luiz or Ollie Watkins or a Bailey or a McGinn or the guys that really make this team click. And that was hugely important to them being so successful last year. This season, they'll be playing Champions League while also trying to sustain their league form. Remember what happened to Newcastle last year? Champions League kind of derailed their season and injuries caught up with them. And unfortunately, they had that little lull. And although they bounced back, that kind of derailed their season. They ultimately finished seventh. I could see something similar happening with Aston Villa this year. I just don't fully believe, as much as they have a lot of quality, and I think Umrami is a really good manager. I believe they'll be the team that's going to fall out of the top four. They have invested well in their squad. They've done it again, which is great to see. They had that success and they didn't just sit on it. They knew they were going to the Champions League. They needed to invest more money, and they did that. Adding Onana, adding Matson, adding Ross Barkley. They sold Douglas Luiz. That's going to be an interesting one. Does Onana is he able to come in and replace what Luiz gave them? Because Luiz was a huge part of everything good Aston Villa did last year. But if Onana can get to the level that saw him being linked to some of the top clubs around the world before he moved to Everton, if he still has that ability, if he really was that good of a player, and we see it at Villa, then we won't really notice the difference of losing Luis, and that could be a huge game changer right there. I mean, also interested to see Matson. I mean, we've seen him do it for Dortmund. They got to the Champions League final last year. He played a big role in that, but there's a big difference between the Premier League and Germany. But bringing in a guy who's got Champions League experience, who's got quality, that's always a good sign. And I believe he could do good things, but he's going to have competition at that left back spot. And then Barkley, was his resurgence real? I mean, we saw him really have a great year last year with Luton Town. Can he do it again? I don't see him playing too big a role in the Champions League, but in terms of being a role guy in the Premier League and maybe starting some games with guys needing to rest with Champions League football, if Barkley can sustain the form he showed last year, that would be a big, big plus for Aston Villa. But I think they're going to take a slight step back. The chasing pack is going to be much closer than they are going to be to the top 2 or 3 in the Premier League. Let's take a look at the 4 teams that are expecting to make a return to Champions League football in 2025. First, we have 5th place Spurs. They had a strong first season under Ange Postecoglou, but it was one that really began well and then kind of dropped off. They weren't able to make any sort of cup run. They went out in the first round, both the League Cup and the FA Cup. They were not playing any European football, and yet their season still kind of went off the rails once they got a couple of injuries. Like, they were key injuries now, don't get me wrong. When Van de Ven went down and Madison went down, those were really big blows. But then the likes of Bentancur, of Basuma and Udogie, their performances just kind of completely dropped off, which was also a big worry, which had nothing to do with the injuries to other players. They just stopped performing at the level that they were to start the season. And that's why you kind of wonder, why should we believe more in this team this season? But I think we'll see them be stronger defensively if they stay healthy. Van de Ven, with his recovery pace and overall quality, is so crucial to them playing that high line. If we see him and Romero, hopefully, I guess they'll save 38 games. You get them playing 34, 35 games this year together. That will help their defense. I'm really, really impressed with them bringing in Dominic Solanke. They needed a legit striker. Richarlison was never the answer. He's a solid backup now, but he was never going to be the answer at number 9. Solanke could be that. And I think he's going to score goals in this Spurs team. And having Son back in the wing, I think that's going to offer just a general better balance to their attack. I'm always more excited to see Son coming off the wing, and I'm excited to see a guy like Solanke playing this Spurs team. I think this is a team that really needs that 9, that guy that's just going to be in the penalty box all the time to just finish off these chances. And I think he could even match or improve on his 19 goals that he scored in the league for Bournemouth last year. I am still a little bit concerned about their midfield, but the talk from the guys that report on the Spurs team, the guys that have been with them over preseason, is that Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall have really fit in well over preseason and look capable of delivering significant performances this season despite being teenagers. I mean, I doubt we'll see too many games where they both play together, but if they could offer a consistent, solid midfield player as a tandem, if they're kind of rotating in and out between each other, that would be a huge boost to this Spurs team, because their midfield is a problem. The consistency with their midfield is a problem. I still don't have faith in Basuma being the player that they thought he was when they were signing him from Brighton. But it's always a bit worrying when you have to rely on a couple of teenagers to play big roles in your team. But maybe they're gonna be those guys that really show up and show out, even if it's not to the highest level, though they can have an impact in their first years with Spurs. What are we going to see about what's the Europa League going to do with them? And can their young guys really break out? I think that's going to decide Spurs' season. The Europa League can derail teams, like playing that Thursday, Sunday role all the time. That can mess teams up. The depth of Spurs' squad isn't bad. I mean, I wouldn't expect them to struggle too much having to play European football, but we've seen before that the Europa League just has that way of negatively impacting league form. And if their young guys can't really have breakout years, that would derail Spurs' push to be making it back into the top 4. but I believe Solanke's going to score goals despite not having proof of scoring goals at the highest level. They've made the right signings. If there's another couple of moves that they can make, I really do believe Spurs can have a better year than they did last year. Next up, we got Chelsea. Chelsea. Oh man. Last season was really rough to start, but obviously a really strong finish under Pochettino to rise up the table and ultimately finish sixth, which of course they thought was going to get them Europa League football. But now they have to go into the qualifiers for the Conference League after Manchester United won the FA Cup and took that Europa League spot. Their squad was too big last year with major injuries on top of that. And this year, it feels like it's still too damn big. They also have a new manager coming in to try and deal with it in Enzo Maresca. He's the guy having to come in to figure it out this time. Look how long it took for Pochettino to figure it out. And Maresca is a lot less proven than Mauricio Pochettino. I will say he obviously showed his quality last year with Leicester, but let's not forget, yeah, he managed Leicester to win the championship. But I think a lot of managers would have been able to do that. I think Leicester were always too strong for that league. So as much as it was impressive, I'm not going to just say, oh yeah, he's definitely that level of manager. His only other previous experience was managing the Serie B where he got sacked. So I mean, how much you want to read into that? Maybe he'll quickly show that he is this top manager when he has quality players like he will have at his disposal at Chelsea, but I'm just not so sure. Palmer was the guy who really stood out for Chelsea last season. 22 goals, 11 assists. But outside of him, there were major question marks and concerns about pretty much everyone else within the squad. There was no one else that I think really thrived or really impressed, whether that be due to injury or just struggles like we saw with the likes of like a Casiedo and Sterling and a few other guys. I mean, can Palmer star again? Will Chelsea be patient with their new manager? I mean, the way that we're going into the season with all these new players again, with another new manager, I really feel like their season could start off very similarly to the way it did last year. Like, do they know that they're their best team? How fit are they going to be this season? I don't think that the Conference League will play too big of a role in disrupting their season. I think they have the squad depth that they can play a lot of their young guys, and that'll be a good chance to actually see some of their other guys get playing time. You think of the likes of maybe Romeo Lavia, Mudryk, Fofana, a few other guys like that getting the chance to play regularly in the Conference League. That could be big, and that could give them the inspiration and the ability to really show themselves to be capable, that they can play bigger minutes in the Premier League and beyond that. So Chelsea still have that worry. I'm not a big believer in Maresca, I'm not gonna lie. Next up, we've got Newcastle United, who finished in seventh last year. Injuries really derailed their season. Alongside their biggest summer signing from last year getting suspended in Tonali. They'll get him back this year. They have no European football this year. Look at what their season fell apart when they were playing the Champions League and the injuries that just really destroyed their season last year. They can really focus in on the Premier League. Isak's going to lead that line with Gordon and Barnes and Almiron up top with him. Like, in terms of a starting 11, like they have a really great team that can absolutely beat anyone on their day. When Newcastle are really on it, they can go toe to toe with anyone, and they're also one of the best teams in the league to watch. I fully believe that Alexander Isak will be the top scorer after Erling Haaland. I think he is a really top striker. I believed in him since Newcastle bought him. Unfortunately, he's had some injury issues, but last season he had 21 goals in the Premier League. Like that's really impressive considering I think he only played 27 games. Like those are serious numbers, and I'm expecting him to really have that breakout year where there's no doubts anymore of who I guess is the best striker, maybe even after and the best scorer of goals in the Premier League after Erling Haaland. If they bring in Mark Gahey, I think that will really strengthen their backline, which I think is also already pretty strong in terms of like their centre backs. When you think of Schär and Botman, and then you look at kind of the younger guys. Can they really break through? The likes of Miley, Livramento, Lewis Hall. If they could really take off and they could start to fill in at left and right back, because I think Trippier is declining. We're seeing him get that bit older. Injuries are starting to hit him. He's also been linked with a transfer away. I think Livramento has a lot of talent. If he can break in and take over that right back role, I know it's tough to replace a guy like Trippier. What he does, he's such a solid defender, and he's a big part of their attacking play as well, and set pieces. So it will be a huge gap to fill. But I think I would love to see Livermento really try and make that spot his own this year. If they can do that, they're absolutely a top four level team, no doubt about it. Maybe they could even be closer to Arsenal and Manchester City. Eddie Howe is a great manager, and if this squad is fit, good things will happen. The final team, the one that's going to be sore to my heart to talk about, the Manchester United. Obviously, in case you don't know, I am a big Manchester United fan. They finished eighth last season, their worst ever Premier League finish. It was just really bad for large periods, but they also suffered crucial injuries to very important players and had 66 injuries overall. It is tough to recover from that. They should have been able to do better. But that, like, the players that suffered the injuries at the times they did, that was just such a killer blow to how United play. They're going to play in the Europa League after winning the FA Cup, where Ten Hag really showed he is capable of setting up a team to win, but can he do it consistently over the course of a full season? That's the question we still have. This is his time to shine. He is going to be under immense pressure right from the off. They need a good start to the season. They need to show that they're playing a more expansive version of football. They need to be a lot more solid and tougher to break down. Like last year, it was absolutely awful trying sometimes watching them, how easy it was to break through them, how bad it was watching Casemiro just fall on the ground and miss tackles. And they still haven't plugged that gap. But they have made some big moves this summer. Hopefully, there is still more to come. I do believe, I say it with hope, but I also believe that there is more moves to come. They still need a midfielder, that proper kind of CDM to maybe possibly replace Casemiro or even just cover some more of his minutes or possibly even play with him. Because even though I still believe Casemiro is we're seeing him age quite drastically. His legs aren't what they used to be. His ability on the ball, his ability aerially is still very, very important to this team, and he still plays a big role within this team. So it's tough to just say, oh yeah, they need to get rid of him. But they should have a strong four center back rotation this season once Yaro was back. It's obviously really disappointing to see him get injured in preseason. He's going to be out probably until November, maybe early December. But then if you think we have him, De Ligt, Martinez, and Harry Maguire, like that feels comfortable. Like that is a pretty strong four player rotation to have at center back. Hopefully Luke Shaw returns, but at least now we have Mazraoui who is able to cover, and also we have Dallo. Like if Mazraoui at right back and Dallo at left back will be a lot better than what we were seeing last year with Wan-Bissaka. I mean, it's just it's tough. I would like to see them commit to a youth and really put their faith in Garnacho and Ahmad as the starting wingers in this team, with Xerxes and Hoyland, who's also recovering from injury, of course, rotating up top. They have depth in most positions. I know it doesn't really feel like that, but they actually do have depth in most positions, despite the fact that it also feels like there's still a few signings short of being legit top four candidates and possibly doing even more than that. One interesting piece that I'm looking at this year, Toby Collier. He impressed in preseason. He is still a very raw talent. Don't get me wrong. This is a young player, a raw talent, but he eats up ground. He gets around the pitch really well. And that's something we definitely need in midfield. You see his limitations when it comes to passing. A lot of the passing that he did when he played in preseason was backwards and sideways. It wasn't too expansive, which is going to hold him back a little bit. But he's still such a young player. If he can play some legitimate minutes this season and make an impact, that would be really, really huge for Manchester United. And I'm really interested to see how he develops and see if he can get some game time this year, because that could really fill a hole that we've been needing for a while. A player that legitimately can get across the pitch and go box to box as a midfielder. My pick for top four next year. I believe Liverpool are going to sustain, and I think they are going to be in the top four. And from the chasing pack, I believe Newcastle are the team that will have a definite Champions League spot next year by finishing in either third or fourth place in the league. I think Isak is going to score a shit ton of goals this year. I think if they are healthy, they are going to really compete. They're going to get results playing against the likes of Arsenal and Manchester City. They're going to beat the teams that are around them and dominate the teams that are well below them. Newcastle, especially like I said before, as a starting 11, they have so much quality. I have such belief in Eddie Howe as a manager. I really think, despite the fact that Newcastle haven't really shown us back-to-back seasons of quality, and they only got into the top four that one time, I believe in them. I believe in them big time this year. I think they have so much quality within this team, and with Isak leading the line and Gordon really breaking out, I don't see what's going to stop them. I'd be really surprised if Newcastle don't make top four. My hope, of course, is that Manchester United are able to do it, but being realistic, I can't say that they've shown me more reason to believe in them than a Newcastle or a Liverpool or even a Spurs side. One thing I will say to finish off, one thing that I think is going to be very interesting to watch is West Ham United. I don't believe that they'll get Champions League, but if we're looking at West Ham in, say, December, early January, and they're within 5, 6 points of the top four, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think they're definitely in the conversation for the European places. I think Lopetegui is a really, really talented manager, and I love the signings. I love how aggressive they've been this year. I think Kudus could have a really big year. If Paqueta is not getting banned, that's obviously him. Whether or not he plays a big role this year, that could really determine how successful their season might be, because you can make the argument that he's the guy that really makes them tick. But West Ham are definitely that team to watch, to see them surprise and impress after moving on from David Moyes. They've had success over the last few years, but I think they could play a much more attractive brand of football, and I think they could be even more impactful than they were under David Moyes. And that's no slander to David Moyes. I think he was a great manager, and I hated the way that West Ham fans treated him because he brought so much success to that club. I think Lopetegui can absolutely sustain it, and maybe doing it in a nicer style that maybe West Ham fans will appreciate more. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up the very first episode of So You Think You Know Ball. Let me know what you guys think. Who is your pick to finish in the top four? Who's your pick to win it all? Do you think City are going to do it again? Do you think it's going to be Arsenal? Do you think it's going to be someone else? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. But yeah, Premier League is back and it feels so good. So thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this episode, interact, let me know what you think. And there'll be plenty more here from So You Think You Know Ball.